Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. As you guys probably know, it's a little bit of a different crew today, but there's a reason for that, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. But to begin, I'd love to just have each of you introduce yourselves and kind of part of your role here at the church, what you do. So we'll start with you.
Okay, start with me. My name's Dudley. I'm the pastor of Global Impact here at Christ Community Church. I love the role. I get to pay attention to three main areas of our ministry. One is the whole compassion world and the compassion sites that we've adopted in Peru. The second is the kind of the traditional role of a mission pastor, that is helping to encourage and support and somehow shepherd all of the people that our church supports, all of the missionaries that our church supports. If I can use that word, some of the people that we do support around the world don't use that word, and that's great because of the places where they are serving or ministering. And then the third is the International Training Institute, which takes up more than half of my time, where we're training pastors and leaders around the world. We started this in 2010 in 2 countries, and now we're in more than 30 countries 15 years later. So that's a lot of fun and
Awesome.
Really great ministry. So.
Right on. So, and then why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Ben Fusco. I am the director of Zoe's. I'm the head custodian, king trash taker-outer, cook all around.
Chef Boyardee.
Yeah, but Zoe's is my realm, and that's what I'm in charge of.
Yeah. Right on. And I'm Nate. I'm the directional pastor of outreach. So both of these guys are representing areas in our church along with local outreach that I definitely get to put my hands in every once in a while, which is super fun. So just a little kind of context as to why we have a little bit of a different setup today. We've been rethinking a lot of what we've been doing in the podcast world, specifically through the kind of the language that we've retooled recently as we talk about what are the pillars of our church, like what are the things that we really want to go after. In the past we had these 3 phrases that we would always say, right? It was about all things with Christ, as a thriving family, bringing hope to all people. And those are great. Like those are awesome. I love the heart. But we realized that we wanted to bring a little bit of clarity to it when people come to us and say, hey, what are you guys about as a church? Like, what do you want for people? It's like, well, 3 things. We actually want them to experience Jesus. We want them to find family, and we want them to carry hope. And so as we thought about this language in the context of our podcast, Jenny, who's our communications director and amazing, had this idea of, well, what if we had different podcasts that really focused on these different areas that we're going after as a church, on these different things that we want people to really step into and to begin to experience. And so we have a podcast that's really going to focus on experiencing Jesus. We've got one that is about finding family. And then because these guys are in this world, we wanted to have a podcast where once a month we can come and talk to you guys about this idea of carrying hope. Like, what does it mean? What does it look like? And to have conversations about things that really surround that area. So that's why Dudley and Ben are here with me. You guys are really in worlds where we are carrying hope. And so really to kick this off, I would love today for us to have a conversation just about the idea of hope, right? Because we talk about carrying hope, like there's probably all kinds of different assumptions that people have about that. What does that look like? Is it just preaching the gospel, or is there a different way that we embody this? And so I just really want to open that up to you guys and say, okay, when we talk about carrying hope, let's stop and pause and just talk about the word hope. Like, what does that mean in our context as people who are part of a church, operating in a very traditional sense, but also in the Zoe's world in a very non-traditional sense? Like, what does that mean to you? How do we do that? Why does it even matter? So Ben, because you're here, you're working in the Greeley world, down at Zoe's, like, why don't you start?
Okay. Hope is hard. We have this English word, and we're limited by its meanings. I think a lot of times we try to use these like meta definitions, these big definitions for what hope is, and we use it a lot of times in our circle. But what I've been wrestling with a lot of the last several years, actually, and it's been expressed through Zoe's, is how hope is embodied
Yeah.
more than it is as something that we just define. I think a lot of times we're chasing after these sort of intellectual concepts, these ideas that we follow, but I don't know that understanding something necessarily makes me change, or understanding something actually brings about the thing we're trying to explain. So I could sit here and say hope is like something in the future, something that we want to see happen. But I think what I've experienced in my life at Zoe's, or just in my life in general, is the interconnectedness of all of the people, and how we all have a fundamental drive and a fundamental longing for hope. A lot of the people that I have, rubbed elbows with in the Zoe's world, or just in general, are people that are all craving some sense of identity and some sense of life. And so oftentimes I've looked through the lens where they're a project, and so I want to give them what I call hope. I want to inspire hope in them, and I use all of these terms to actually uplift the idea of what the word hope is. But I'm learning more and more that hope is just walking alongside them where they're at. Hope is much more of an embodied approach. It's something that I actually understand in my act of actually doing it.
Yeah.
The more that I actually step into something, it's almost like, for me, hope actually doesn't exist unless I actually step into hope.
Yeah.
That's like almost creating it as I move forward in that. And so, I have longings for the future. I have hopes for the future. But I think sometimes for me, they feel like a little bit of a drug, like it's this thing that's always on the horizon. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that that's answered some of these deeper longings inside me as much. So hope is changing all the time for me. Yeah. And I think I find it a lot of times in our world here, when I'm sitting with somebody and I'm listening to their story and I'm giving them my own presence, or they're giving me their presence. It's a privilege a lot of times to have conversations or share a meal or do events or participate in the things that really matter in the lives of people. And I think out of those things, you start to see hope with teeth, hope that is actually doing something, or that is moving towards something. So it's a really ambiguous word in general when you actually mine it out and you talk about what it really means. And I think it's varied. We have these concepts of what it is, but for me, it's a lot about being an embodied presence as one example of what hope is. So that's how I'd answer off the cuff.
Off the cuff. I love it. How about you, Dudley?
Off the cuff. I was thinking about that, off the cuff. Sometimes I feel like we have to step back and we have to say, okay, I want to be a carrier of hope, but why is that? And in the context of our world, whether it's at some micro level with one individual in one situation, or at some big macro level where it's, the whole of, salvation, but people need hope because there's a lot of chaos around us. And that chaos, who was the character in Charlie Brown, where everywhere he went, the dust just kind of billowed around him? Pigpen. I think that's where a lot of people are living. They just feel like wherever they go, there's this swirling of chaos around them, and that's what diminishes hope. And I think that's when we come alongside somebody, whether it's in a small, little situation or a big situation, we're able to speak into that world and help move away some of that dust of chaos so that they can see that their life matters or that the decisions that they're making are significant and valuable. So it's kind of like removing the chaos from people so they can see clearly and step into a little more joy or a little more sense to their life.
No, I think that's really good. I love that imagery of Pigpen, because I think it's so accurate, right? Like we live in a world where our vision is so clouded by things, and I don't think it only exists out there in the world with people who don't know Jesus. I truly believe it exists in the church too. It exists with people who do follow Jesus and know Jesus, because I think sometimes we have distilled hope down to this idea of just being the word proclaimed. So if I were to go to my grandpa, right, he's almost 100 years old and he's still kicking. Amazing dude. But if I were to go hey, grandpa, what does it mean to carry hope to the world? What do you think his response would be?
to carry salvation to the world.
Yeah,
That
and
they need to be saved.
how do you do that? It's like, oh, you've just got to go preach, right? You've got to go just share the words, and people need to repent, and now they have hope. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. But like, and this is something I love, like both from your heart, Dudley, and also yours here down at Zoe's Ben. Like, I think that's just a small part of what hope really is. Like, hope isn't just this thing that we have for the future after we die. Like, I think hope is something we're supposed to embody here in the present. Good news is not just you're not going to hell. Good news is like God loves you and he's here and he wants you to experience life right where you are. And I yearn for the church to experience more of that.
Yeah.
Like to broaden, this is what life truly is. Like this is what hope truly is. It's not just this thing that we could experience once we're dead and gone. Like there's hope we could experience here. And a part of why I love really the ministries that each of you guys are a part of is because that is something that you guys are going after. Whether you're off in Sierra Leone or Kenya or down in Latin America, or whether you're working with guys coming out of Jobs for Hope or working with the city, like we want people to flourish and to experience life right now. And yeah, salvation's a part of that. Like we want that for people, but it's so much bigger than that. I'd be interested to hear maybe some of your thoughts off of that.
Yeah, well, for me, I always want to come back to the text, right? To the biblical text. That's just who I am. But so I'm thinking of this really well-known passage in Jeremiah where God says, I know the plans for you to give you a future and a hope. So, and I don't think that's like this future hope of salvation someday, but it's in the context. It's coming back out of being exiled in Babylon and coming back to the promised land. It's this return of a future and of a hope. Now, specifically, that's to the people of Israel, but I think in a metaphorical way, that's also for us. We come back to this place of where we experience how we were created to be, or we remove again the chaos and we live in the joy of the life that God has given us. So there's something I think that's really helpful there. It's that image of returning, of clearing away, of experiencing once again. So I see that specifically. Well, you mentioned Latin America or Africa, and of course we see so much poverty in places like that, and people need to have a hope that they can live even in a different situation from that their context can change.
Yeah.
And then, here in our country, we have so much wealth. Even the poorest of us, we still have a lot of wealth. And yet inside of us, there's this poverty of spirit. And people need to have some hope that God is really there and he wants to make sense of their life and give them a direction and a purpose and a focus.
Yeah.
So
I think
coming out of exile.
I think there's a lot, like if I heard that Jeremiah scripture, I would probably say in some point that God is actually saying that it's not closed, the reality of your future.
Right.
And so I think a lot of times we live in this area where we think that most everything is written or written out for our lives, that something that we're moving towards has an end instead of being present to the reality now. And I used to always struggle with the idea that my life existed on the horizon. And so I have an internal, and I know like many men deal with this, but people in general for sure, is that we live in this continual cycle of whatever striving is, because we think that hope is something that's on the horizon, that I'm moving towards something that's going to be down there, as if it's going to be there. Like we don't, and so for the Israelites, I think that they didn't have an idea that there was a future. Right. And so I think God's saying to you, like, the future is open. I'm going to give you a future. And I think that what I hear in that too, kind of riffing off of what I hear when you travel, Dudley, is there's a lot that has to do with the people that are around the world that are facing these things. And they're in like poverty systems, right? They're in systems of degradation or these really terrible places for their society. And then we think that there's a hope that we can give them in the midst of that. And I think there's this really hard tension of like, as a follower of Jesus, it's like offering somebody hope and then being hope in some sense by my actions and participation in God's mission of the earth. on the earth as he is starting to hopefully see that future become now. So I think to offer people a future, like the future is open. And I think if you look at the systems of our world all the time, most of everything is around these closed doors, right? And control kind of comes in place. But I think God is saying, like, we don't think forward. We don't think in creative terms. We don't think in future terms. And I think God would want us to actually do that. And if we do that, then we have to partner with him to actually alleviate those systems that are actually creating the poverty in the first place. So it becomes less of, you're going to be okay, there's a hope, instead of we are partnering with God actively to come against the systems so that we've worked ourselves out of a job in some sense on this earth.
That's a really good point.
And I just want to, that's where the embodied part of being hope. Like, we can present a message the whole time, and we'll present messages to people because people need messages sometimes. But more often, they need our presence. They need an embodied presence.
Right.
And I want to be careful in my own life, and this isn't to say anything about us specifically, but I want to be careful in my own life. Is like, I'm not the answer.
Yep.
I have no answer for these people.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be a person that embodies the presence of life of Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? I don't need to speak anything to them. I don't need to give them a message. I want to hear their story so that they can belong to something. And I think people fundamentally crave a desire to belong first and foremost. Mm-hmm. And once we can show that they belong, then we can allow God to do whatever God does in that moment. But they have to belong first. And every story that I think of at Zoe's, from mentoring kids to being a high school football coach to being connected to the college students to, working with people that are wrestling with addictions or whatever, every single one of them has a similar story in their deep, deep, deep desire for belonging, for acceptance, and to be seen. And I think of my own children, right? When they've wrestled with their own, like, dark nights of the soul or whatever they're going through, it always comes down to this fundamental desire that I'm lonely and I want to be seen and I want to be part of something. I want to be accepted. And I'm not part of something that has to do with, like, a big mission. So I don't want to present them this big agenda mission of hope. I want them to see that they matter and that they are seen and they are known. And so sitting with them is a huge discipline of my own, because I'm always wanting to give them an answer. Mm-hmm. I'm always wanting to coach them or teach them out of it. But I find more life comes to them when they can sit in that and I can just be with them. And as I'm doing that, I can actually hear them better for myself, but then they actually build their own sense of resilience. And in that sense of resilience, they have their own expression of hope. It's an embodied thing. It's hope with teeth, as I keep saying. So,
well, and that's just the example of what Jesus did with us, right? When God looked at the brokenness of humanity and the plight of humanity, there wasn't like this big, hey, here's our 5-step plan of how we're going to fix this. Like, no, like, what did he do? He's like, well, I'm going to go be with them. And I'm going to live with them, and I'm going to empathize with them, and then after doing that, then I'm going to save them, right? Like, there is something about the incarnation that I think is so easy for us to forget sometimes as people, that the plan was never go out there and do this. It was like, no, just go sit and be with 12 people for a couple years, live with them, embody hope in that place, in that space. That's what's going to lead to transformation. And that's really kind of what I hear you talking about here. Like, yeah, there might be this future whatever thing that's happening, but, like, God is inviting us to be present in the places and spaces that we already are. That's what people need most. And when we talk about this idea of carrying hope as a church, right, that this is what we yearn for, I mean, it's basically exactly everything you just said, but right where God already has us, right? So it's not like, well, okay, what countries have we not gone to yet in Latin America or Africa? Right. And again, like, we totally should do some of that stuff. But when we talk about carrying hope for the everyday believer, it's like, well, okay, but, like, you don't have to go to Africa or to Latin America to do this stuff. You can practice carrying hope in your home with your kids. You can practice carrying hope in your workplace or on your sports team. Like, wherever God has you, you have the ability to be somebody who embodies the hope of the gospel, not just in this future sense, but think about love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. Like, you can embody all of that.
You listed them all out. You got them all out.
I got them all out. Yeah. You can
he
embody.
went to Awanas as a kid.
Good job,
Approved
Nate.
workmen are not ashamed.
That's right.
Right? Boys and girls in the service claim. Hail Awana.
Wow.
I rest my case.
I never went to Awana.
Dude,
Should you go to therapy now?
Well, my mom made me go.
Did you
so-
memorize your
okay.
verses in the King James?
All moms made you go.
They were all King James.
I don't know
went
if
for a couple
I don't know
years.
if every mom made their kid go.
I didn't
My
go
kids
to.
went.
I didn't go to Awana. I never
Did
grew up
Awana
with
exist,
I'm too old to have gone to
You're
Awana.
too old. You're too old. That's right. But like thinking about just like the practicality of carrying hope, like I would love to just hear stories from your lives. Like, and we could talk about what this looks like in the future as we do more podcasts and kind of go after specific things. But
Right.
like you are two guys that I know who really, I think, embody the heartbeat of what this phrase means. Like I've seen you carry hope in some pretty significant ways. I've seen you carry hope in some pretty significant ways. Like, how has that impacted you guys?
It's impacted me in that there is something extraordinarily significant about what we're doing, because we have. There was a young man in Colombia that I got to know who was part of our ITI, and I saw such great potential in him being one of these like leaders of this ITI. Young, he was a coach actually, like a PE teacher as well in high school, and then he got cancer. He was diagnosed with cancer, and about 3 years later, he was gone. And the times that I still have some text messages from him on WhatsApp. It's just like, how can I walk with him through this? So there was a sense of eternal hope, but there was also a sense of, even right now, his life matters going through this with his wife and his 2 kids. And, I wanted him to constantly have this sense of hope, because, man, if you take that away from his life, it's like, man, he's dying young. There's no significance to his life. There's no value to his life. And every time I texted him, I think he was really appreciative that I would actually text him and take some moments just to like connect with him and be with him, to somehow, again, point him to the significance of his life and the value of his life that was headed to a very short end. So I mean, that's kind of an example.
Sure.
Yeah.
If I could peel back a little bit of what I heard you say, Nate, too, is I was asking myself, actually, I was asking my son this: what if we worked ourselves out of a job as Christians? What if the whole thing that we're doing is to kind of create a world and imagine a world where there is no more need for any saints, that we don't exist anymore, that we're working ourselves out of a job? So for me, when I was dealing with a friend who was in addiction, I wasn't even dealing with a friend. I shouldn't say it that way. When I was encountering this friend while he was wrestling with his addiction, there was no answer in the moment. It was just a person who was burdened by their own pain and burdened by their own self-identification of failure, and just hates himself and has just some of the lowest self-esteem, as I have had as well in my own life, because of just circumstances and the human struggle. But I just remember sitting with him, right? And that was it. And just gave him a hug at the end. And I don't think that there was anything magical about the moment.
Yeah.
But every single time we have those encounters, whenever something kind of hits rock bottom for this person, the only answer is kind of a hug in that moment. Or it's just sitting there and asking questions, or letting them kind of verbally vomit all of the stuff that they're going through in that moment. And I don't have an answer. Like, I'm not a registered therapist or, counselor or an addiction counselor or anything like that. I just know that being with that person in that moment and hugging them, and I obviously there's story after stories. I've been coaching football for 18 years. They're all similar stories. This person just says, I hate myself, and I've always hated myself. And there's an internal narrative that they feed off of, right? And they don't feel like they belong to anything. And that hug is sort of the thing that kind of breaks down this veneer outside of this person for a moment. And after those moments, every single time we go through a season where this person is glowing or they have more life to them,
Yep.
there are more energy to them. Right? We don't have to talk about hope. We don't have to think about it. There's no intention to it. All it is the ability to be in the present. So
Yeah.
when I want to peel back what you said, a lot of times I think I have thought, I'll say I, even though I push it on all of us, there's a lot of the times we think that when we think about a concept, we think about it in this ethereal way as if it exists in a box.
Yep.
And I can go into the box and I can take out hope when I need it. Mm-hmm. And I just think that misappropriates the reality of the gift that we've been given.
Absolutely.
We are, by vocation, God's image. And that is true regardless of whether we follow Jesus or not. Humankind was created in the image of God.
Sure.
And so we have something of a vocation as humans to do something to what we call reality and creation. The way we act towards it, the way we act towards ourselves. And so that sort of Hebraic term of the brokenness and sin is actually the circle that's broken, right?
Yeah.
It's not something in the Greek way that is like you miss the mark, right? It's more resembled by a relational circle, and that thing's broken. And so we have a broken relationship with ourselves, my own internal self. I have a broken relationship with humanity, and I have a broken relationship with what we call creation. And so, but I still am God's image. And because I'm still God's image, I still, by nature of my vocation as his image, have this thing that is like hope inside.
Yeah.
And I think it's less about the thing that I can understand and more about the thing that I can be present to, that is a reality that exists behind reality at all times.
So, can I ask you a question, though? In that kind of a concept, at least it seems to me, to be a carrier of hope, I have to somehow like help put it back together for the person so that it doesn't just remain some ethereal idea, but I'm helping reassemble either the circle of relationship or just helping them to see a bigger picture that they do fit into this world because they are beings created in the image of God.
That's correct.
And they have an innate meaning, value, and purpose.
Right.
One, and I think you're both right, though, right? Like, so I think there is this conceptual, we've got to rebuild, we've got to help people understand some things. But at the same time, knowledge alone doesn't get you there.
Right.
It's experiential.
Yeah, and I don't. That's not what I heard. What I heard, and this is the cool part about it, is like I think that if we take the circle kind of analogy and we complete it, like Jesus is the one who is the complete circle.
Sure.
Right. So there's a perfection in the wholeness of the circle, and we think sometimes perfection is this marred stain on a shirt, and I see it more as the perfect whole. Right. And so what Jesus has done is it's almost like he draws a circle around himself. And he says, inside this circle is complete wholeness.
Yep.
And he says, marry me. And we come into the circle. Right. And in that, there's a restoration of the brokenness of the wholeness that is broken across of humanity. The one inside me, the one in between us, and the one between our creation as we know it, the physical world, whatever we're calling the cosmos, if you will. Right. So that's all part of the journey of being able to see the reality that God has painted for humanity. God created, like I like the analogy of the Matrix, because behind the wall of the Matrix all the time, you see the code whenever you go into the Matrix.
Right.
I think God created reality like the Matrix. There's a code where the Matrix or God's world, the cosmos, operates by a certain code. And the people that are Christians are the ones who see the code, in my mind, and are inviting people to see and be attentive to the code. And when we do, then we see the world the way God sees that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the restoration of the circle for us, and it's an invitation for us to see life. And so Jesus comes on the scene in full humanity, right? And actually says like, oh, okay, this is the kingdom of God. And he starts pointing out the code everywhere he goes.
Yeah.
And so the Sermon on the Mount is this beautiful expression of him saying, you think it's like this, but this is what the code is.
Okay.
You think it's like this, but this is what the code is. And it's this invitation to see life in that way. So in hope, I just want to live out a way where I'm trying to be attentive to the code. And if I'm attentive to that code, that allows me to just live fully
Yeah.
And it's natural, so that I don't choose to bring hope to somebody. I'm not choosing to hug this person because I'm like, this person needs hope. I'm going to hug them. I'm giving them hope. It's not an intentional transactional way. This is the only response there is. And I think in response to that, that's how
to use that like Matrix analogy, it's like wherever Neo went, like he knew he was in the Matrix. Like there was no moment where he's like, oh, this isn't the Matrix. I need to tell. Like it was just this ingrained. And so because he understood that, like he could operate in a different way wherever he was, in a way that nobody else could, because he understood the code. He knew how to adapt to it. And so to kind of bring this to a close, I think, because I know we can go on forever, but don't worry, we'll do more. The reason that I think we really talk about this idea of carrying hope as a church is because a lot of times there's this misnomer out there that hope is the thing that exists within the church. So we need to bring people to church because that's where they're going to experience hope. But to go off what you're just saying, it's like, no, like hope is already out there in this new kingdom thing that God is doing. We are just the ones who are going to call attention to that.
Agreed.
We're not carrying something brand new somewhere else.
Correct.
It's not like God's not moving in our city until we show up and bring him there. No, God is already doing amazing things all across the city of Greeley, all across the world. Mm-hmm. We just want to go and partner him with him in that. And that is what we get to do as carriers of hope. We step into a place, whether it's a neighborhood, a school, a gym, like wherever it is you are, we see the code, we call out the code, and we be present to the things that are happening right in that place. Because often the things that God's doing, it involves people. It always involves people.
Always involves people.
Always involves people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rough.
Tough.
Yeah.
But beautiful.
Oh, of course. Absolutely.
Rough, tough, and beautiful.
Rough, tough, and beautiful.
That should be the name of this podcast. Rough, tough.
Pass.
No, I don't think so.
You don't want to be beautiful?
I think there's other things.
Veto.
We vetoed.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. We'll be back next month, but we hope you have a great day.